It was an unlikely place, I admit. I was down on the basement level of the Kane County Jail. I was there to visit an inmate. Visiting someone at the Kane County Jail involves sitting on a little stool in front of a screen that's about the size of a computer screen, and then waiting until that screen comes on. Now, on the right side, actually it's the left side of the screen, there is a receiver. And behind the screen, there is a very large box. So my screen came on, and I picked up my receiver, but I wasn't receiving anything. In the meantime, I was watching the little clock in the right-hand corner of the screen box, and it was ticking away because I knew that I had 30 minutes, and it just kept ticking while I wasn't receiving any kind of message. The persons who were sitting next to me on their little stool in front of their screen box were a middle-aged black woman and a girl, probably 10 or 11 years old. They were watching their screen boxes, watching that little clock tick away, those precious moments that would have been their visit. When finally, the woman next to me turned to me and said, "They're cheating us." That's how our conversation began. She told me a little bit about why she was coming to the jail, and I discovered that she had been there now for the very first time. I remember the very first time I visited the jail. I didn't know what was going on. And so I explained to her how it usually went, since I'm an old-timer. I've been visiting now for 2 years. And so I explained all the steps, and then I told her I was going to go upstairs and talk to the receptionist and see if we could get some help so that we could get some reception on our screen boxes. Then I came back down, and we continued to reflect. And she said to me, "Why can't we see the person when we come here?" And I explained to her that now people are much more afraid than they used to be, so they don't transport inmates into a visiting room where you can actually see a person across a glass partition, like it used to be once upon a time. You could even put your hand up against the glass, and they could put their hand up on the other side as you said farewell. But now, you can't even see the person at all. They keep people locked in the locked area of the jail, and you're watching them in a room somewhere far away in front of a screen box. She was understanding that. After a few moments, she said, "Yes, I guess it is fear. Yes, that seems to be right. That's why this is happening." And so we continued reflecting, and after a while, I told her that I was a minister. She was delighted. That's an unusual response for me. And she said, "I believe that you are here sitting next to me for a reason." Now, I wasn't totally keen on that idea at the time, but I kept listening, and I said, "Well, I'm going to go back up there one more time and see if we can get the receptionist," because now 15 or 20 minutes had passed, to fix a situation so we could actually have our visits. And in the meantime, her 10-year-old daughter was getting more and more sad and discouraged. So when I came back, we were assigned to screen boxes really far away from each other. But we both got our 30-minute visits. And so that meant we left together. There wasn't anyone else who left when we did, because they'd finished their visits long ago. And we walked up those long steps up to the top, and when we got to the first floor, to the door, she hugged me and she said, "I am so glad you were here today." And that is when I knew it. she was right. This was a God event. There was a reason why I was there that day. When Jacob was journeying and he had left his home, he had an experience with God in the middle of nowhere that led him to say the words, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I never knew it." So listen with me to this story about Jacob on the run in chapter 28 of the book of Genesis. Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. He came to a certain place and stayed there for the night, because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. And he dreamed that there was a ladder set up on the earth, the top of it reaching all the way to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And the Lord stood beside him and said, "I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and your offspring. And your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and the east and the north and the south, and all the families of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your offspring. Know that I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." Then Jacob woke from his sleep and said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." The word of the Lord. In a book titled "Conjectures of a Guilty Bystander," Thomas Merton describes his connection with the rest of the human race using these words: "In the middle of the being of every person that God has created is a place of nothingness. It is a place where only God can be. It cannot be assailed by sin or covered by illusion. It is a place where there is a divine spark. Like a diamond, like a precious diamond, it shows forth all of the invisible light of God." Jacob was on his way to who knows where when this story happened. He had actually stolen his brother's birthright, which is never a good thing to do. And his mother could see that his brother Esau was coming home any time. And so she told him, "You must get out of here. You must run away because your brother will catch up with you." So when Jacob left his home, and this was the first time he had left his home, and he was a homebody, not somebody who liked to be traveling around or being outdoors, then he started his journey all alone. And he had been on his journey for a while when he stopped in a certain place. It was actually a place he didn't know what it was. It was in the middle of nowhere. Before his dream, I believe that Jacob thought that he was only on this earth to survive. To survive. And that he did not have any further purpose than that. And I also believe that he thought he was alone. Completely alone. So when he went to sleep, he had a dream. A dream that convinced him that he was neither here to just survive or to be alone. He saw in his dream a gate of heaven opening up, and on a ladder or a ramp, he saw angels going up and down that ramp, that gate. He saw transportation between heaven and earth. He noticed that God was connected to the earth. But that's not the best part. He saw God standing right next to him, and God spoke to him and said, I am the Lord, your God. I was the God of Abraham and of Isaac, your father, and I will give to you this land upon which you lie, and your descendants shall be more than the dust. And I will be with you to keep you wherever you go. Wow. There in the middle of nowhere, God. That's probably why Jacob burst out with that saying that is so familiar to us. Surely the Lord is in this place. And I did not know it. This is none other than the house of God and the gate of heaven. What a discovery. An amazing discovery. When I was at the jail that day, I was not expecting an encounter from God. Far from it. I actually was running late. And as that little clock in the right-hand side of the screen kept ticking away, I could see that I was going to be running even later because my visit had not begun, and I had a 5:30 meeting back here at the church, and I needed to drive back all the way from St. Charles to here to get to that meeting on time. So that is what was going through my mind that day when I began to have a conversation with my friends who were sitting next to me. I had already looked at my watch several times. They probably noticed that I was very impatient. But it seems neither one of us were going anywhere because she hadn't had her visit and I hadn't either. That is the last place I think I would have ever imagined an encounter with God. And you know, I was so very wrong about that. And she was so very right. You know, if she hadn't said to me, you are here with me for a reason that day, I probably would have missed the God encounter completely. I wouldn't have even known that the words that I was saying to her and the help that I was offering was a gate of heaven to her. That's the way it always is, you know. We may think we're alone. We are not. We may think that we're here to survive. We are not. We are not any more alone than I was that day when I was sitting in front of my screen box. We are not alone. In fact, God is pursuing us all the time. That Jesus was sent to us. He was sent to us to pursue the lost and those who were in darkness. And he has never stopped pursuing. He was pursuing me there in the jail. He was pursuing my friends who were next to me in the jail. And they are the first ones who figured it out, that that's what was going on. And you know what? He's pursuing each one of you right now. Through your mind, through your heart. He's pursuing you now. He will be pursuing you when you leave this place. And he's going to be pursuing everyone that you encounter. Because that's what God does. God pursues us. We are not alone. We never have been alone. And we're not here just to survive. We have a job. We have a job. It turns out, even though I didn't know it, I was doing that job at the jail. When I was being so impatient and so wishing that I wasn't there, I was doing the job that I was there to do. And that job is to be a God bearer. You see, each one of us is a God bearer. Just like Merton said, We carry something deep in our hearts, a place that only belongs to God, a place that can open up the gate of heaven to the persons that we encounter and even to ourselves. And we are to carry that spark, that God, to this world that is so dark and so difficult for so many people. And others are carrying that God to us too. There is traffic between heaven and earth, and it is happening through us. We are God bearers. You know, Jacob would have never thought that he, of all people, would encounter God in the middle of nowhere. Jacob was a thief. He was on the run. He thought he was going to be killed. He didn't think that God was going to show up, and with gifts too. And yet that's exactly what happened. Sometimes we don't feel that God is showing up in our lives either. Maybe we feel guilty. Maybe we're running away from something. Maybe we're just tired. But God is using us just as God used Jacob. We are God bearers. You know, my prayer for us and for this church is that we might taste the sweet nectar of that sweet, sweet Spirit that pours in when we open the gate of heaven for the people in God's world that need it the most. For we are not alone. God is pursuing us. And we are not here to just survive. We are here to bear God to a world that is desperate for just a spark of that God to come into their world. And God is with us. The God of Jacob is not just pursuing us. That God is pursuing the whole wide world.